Good afternoon. Thanks for having me back after 6 years. My name's Andrew Hundley. I'm the Executive Director of Louisiana Parole Project. Parole Project is a nonprofit organization based in Baton Rouge. Our office is at 319 3rd Street in the beautiful Grant Building downtown. I see my good friend and landlord, Ben Taylor, came out here today to listen to me speak. But I appreciate all of you for giving me the opportunity to give you an update and talk about how things have gone for the last 6 years. Some of you in this room were at our luncheon yesterday. I thank you for being willing 24 hours later to hear me speak again. I promise that it's not the same talk that I gave yesterday. The mission of Parole Project is to enhance public safety first and foremost. We're not about getting as many people out of prison as possible. We're about public safety. That's our first mission. And we enhance it through effective advocacy programming and services for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated persons so that they may reach their full potential. Our vision is a justice system that recognizes rehabilitation, restoration, and redemption. In short, we believe in the ability for people to change, and when given the opportunities, to help people be better than the worst moment in their life. Before I talk more about the organization, though, let me talk a little bit about myself. This photo was taken in 2015 at Louisiana State Penitentiary at Angola. I wish I could tell you I was a cowboy. It's more like I played one on TV for those who know me really well. But in 2015, approximately a year before my release, I worked on the prison's range crew, which was the cattle operation, over 2,000 head of cattle, spread over 18,000 acres at Angola. I was given some great opportunities while I was incarcerated to build leadership skills, to develop my character, and working with those horses and 2,000 plus cows greatly impacted my character and made me grateful that everything that I had today. So when that picture was taken in 2015, I had no idea I would be home a year later. When I woke up that morning, I was thinking about cows. I don't remember the day, but I know what I was thinking about, and every morning I woke up around that time, I was thinking about cows. I was arrested in 1997 as a 15-year-old, given a life without parole sentence. I was lost, went to the prison system, and came out a totally different person. I don't stand here as an advocate for people to go to the prison system to better themselves. The prison system does one of two things for you. It exposes you for who you are, and you come out as a worse person than you went in, or you come home as a better person. No one comes out as the same person they were. But approximately 1 year later, I had a parole hearing, and I was given, much to my surprise, I assumed, I was 34 years old at the time. I thought they're going to deny me, and a couple of years later they're going to deny me again. And after about 10 years, maybe they'll get tired of denying me and I'll be home one day. And as a 33-year-old in that picture, like I said, I woke up thinking about cows, and when I went to bed, probably my prayer was, I hope I can come home while my parents are still alive. And I'm thankful that I was home while my parents were still alive, and my parents are still alive today, and they're going to be visiting me at my home this weekend. So, a snapshot of the Louisiana Department of Corrections, just some facts. As of the end of June, more than 28,000 state prisoners. These are individuals who've been adjudicated, they've been convicted of their crimes, not people who were arrested in the last couple weeks, but nearly 29,000 state prisoners in Louisiana. You'll notice fewer than half of those are at state prisons. Louisiana, we house a large number of our state prisoners. This isn't a editorial, this is just facts and no opinion submitted, but we house most slightly more than half of our state prisoners at local facilities. And an abnormal amount are housed at, we know that most of our state population is in South Louisiana. A lot of sheriffs in North Louisiana built larger prisons a couple decades ago. They get a per diem for housing state prisoners. So you may read from time to time and wonder, why does Baton Rouge house a lot of its prisoners in Catahoula Parish? I can't tell you why, I'm just telling you it's a fact. But nearly 14,000 state prisoners at state prisons, fewer than 4,000 at Angola, more than 2,000 at Elaine Hunt Correctional in St. Gabriel, 1,600 at DCI, which is in Jackson, and 443 at LCIW, which is temporarily at the old Jetson grounds. They're going to break ground on a new LCIW facility in St. Gabriel in the coming months. So sentence length for everyone in the Louisiana Department of Corrections, less than half are doing sentences of 10 years or more, 20% doing sentences of 11 to 20 years, 21% doing sentences of 21 plus years. Actually, not a lot of people doing sentences of 21 or 22 years. We give long sentences in Louisiana, a lot of people doing 40, 50, 100-year sentences, and then 14% of our population doing life sentences. Generally in Louisiana, life means life without parole. I know you're looking at me, well, what happened to you? There were a series of U.S. Supreme Court decisions that gave juvenile offenders like me a second look, but most people in Louisiana are doing life without parole. The current age of people in our state prisons, 8% or less are 24 and younger, 42% are between 25 and 39, 40% are 40 to 59, and 10% are 60 and older. So half of our state prison population is 40 or older. They may be older than you think. It's actually not that people are committing crimes in old age, because most crimes actually committed between the ages of 17 and 25. We just keep people in prison for quite a long time in Louisiana. Recidivism, that's the term for the rate at which people return to prison. In Louisiana, we study recidivism in 5-year increments. So for those released in 2017, 40.3% were recidivists. Compare that to 45.4% in 2008. So it hasn't, every year, there hasn't been a steady decline, but if we look at over the last decade, there has been an overall decline in recidivism rates. Why is that happening? It's happened really over the last 20 years. It's happened over multiple governors' administrations. I assume recidivism rates will continue to tick down under the current governor. It's just because our corrections department and our community has gotten smarter about reentry. So 2 different sets of policies. I know we heard a lot about the crime session and the criminal justice policy on the front end. I'm not going to give you any opinions or talk about that today. I want to talk about the back end. And the Department of Corrections in Louisiana, and take this with a grain of salt. I'm telling you as someone who used to be there. I could stand here and tell you it's a horrible place run by horrible people. As someone who was incarcerated, I can tell you from the time that I went in and the time I left, the prison system has gotten better in Louisiana, especially as it relates to preparing people for release. Not perfect, but we've steadily improved. We're applying our learnings, and I have no reason to believe that'll continue to happen. But just another note of those recidivists, that 40.3% overall number, of those releasing from state prisons, 35% return to prison. Of those releasing from local facilities, 43%. The short end of that, there's a couple things that go in there, but people at state prisons are generally people with longer sentences. They're generally the people that committed the tougher crimes, but they come home as older individuals. Older people are less likely to commit crimes than younger people. Also, there's more opportunities at state prisons. Opportunities to earn a skill, opportunities to learn a trade. I don't know if there are any sheriffs in the room. I'm sure most sheriffs would tell you we do a fine job at our local facilities providing resources the numbers would say they don't do quite as good of a job as the state facilities. And finally, a number to look at is parole board releases have a 22% recidivism rate. So these are people who are getting released earlier. If you're released by the parole board, you get out a little early. If you don't get released by the parole board, you do your entire sentence. So it may be counterintuitive, but people who get released a little bit early by the parole board actually are less likely to come back to prison. Doesn't make sense, but there's a couple things there. One, there is a sweet spot for releasing someone. And sometimes it's better to release someone at the age of 35 when they can go and get a job than it is to release them at 50 when it's tougher for an employer to release them. Every situation's different, but also the parole board can grant extra conditions to your release than if you're released whenever you've completed your sentence. There are a lot less restrictions on the rules you have to apply. So just wanted to give some of that background on the state of the Louisiana Department of Corrections. Back to Parole Project, we were founded in 2016, and the idea we had, and the idea I spoke to you about 6 years ago, was forming an organization that was based on peer-mentored community reentry. If you go to AA or NA and you get a sponsor, your sponsor isn't going to be someone who's been sober their entire life. Your sponsor is going to be someone who was an addict, who was an alcoholic, that has gone through the program, they're sober today, and they're here to be a peer mentor for you. We had the same idea. Who better to mentor people coming home from prison than other people who had been in prison, who had come home and learned to lead good lives? Now, this bucked conventional wisdom for most correction systems, not only in Louisiana or outside. The idea is ex-cons should not associate with other ex-cons, because when ex-cons hang out, bad things happen. What Parole Projects proved is when good ex-cons hang out with other ex-cons and provide them good mentorship, good things happen. We're evidence-driven. One thing I have a unique perspective in the criminal justice system. I did time in the criminal justice system, then I studied it in college, and then, for the last several years, I've been a practitioner, been able to apply a lot of those reports that I read while I was in college. We've applied the evidence to what we do. 575 clients have been released to our program over since we started in 2016. Less than 2% have returned to prison. So compare that 40.3% to 2%. Now, not all of my clients have been home for 5 years. That number is going to tick up. Some of them have been home for 5 years plus. Some of them have been home a couple years. Some of them have been home a couple weeks. But come back and look at these numbers 5 years from now, and I'm telling you our number is going to remain in the low double digits. It's an example. Yes, we're a little special. We're good at what we do, but really the message there is if we invest. We've had the resources to invest in a small percentage of the people who've been released from Louisiana prisons over the last several years. Those people haven't returned to prison. So at a minimum, some people will say from a tax burden to a taxpayer. So we can look simply at the money that the state's not spending to incarcerate them as a benefit to the state. But what I'll tell you is our clients are more likely to be contributors, because we don't just teach people how to stay out of prison. Our goal is to teach them how to be good members of the community, how to be contributors, how to thrive, how to do more than just get by. And if that happens, they're not going back to prison. So I like to show this photo whenever I give talks, mostly because I was probably 10 pounds lighter and didn't have any gray hair at the time. But this one photo is a perfect example in one shot of what we do. This is an individual who came home after more than 30 years in the Louisiana Department of Corrections. So when he went to prison, he had never used a cell phone. He had never used a debit card. So imagine all the other technological advancements. Never paid for gas at the pump. So he's looking at a gas pump, something we all take for granted. He's looking at it as a foreign thing. This is on, for those of you who travel St. Francisville, this is the Circle K on Highway 61 in St. Francisville on the way back from Angola. This is 30 minutes after he walked out of the front gate. That's when we start mentoring immediately. Let me show you how to use a debit card and pay for gas at the pump all at one time. They're always learning moments. This individual, I have no concern in individuals like him. I have no concern that they're going to want to go back and commit crime. I worry that they're going to learn to fit into the community, because if they can't fit into the community, then they're going to be shut-ins and they can't be contributors. So I said we're evidence-driven. Evidence tells us that peer mentorship reduces recidivism. There's been a lot of studies around it. And look, there are fine people who've never been to prison that are mentors. We need both. But there is something to be said about having people with the experience, shared experiences working together in that mentor setting. Standard services plus peer mentorship are most effective. That means just being a good mentor doesn't drive down recidivism. Being a mentor and providing services. So done in a combination. Early intervention. We start working with our clients before they release from prison. We have an excellent relationship with the Department of Corrections. You're never going to see me give an interview about how bad a prison is. You're never going to see me give an interview about how much I disagree with this elected official, because first and foremost, our commitments to the people in prison that we're serving, that we're trying to help rebuild their lives, so I have to have access to them. We maintain a good working relationship with the wardens, with parole officers, and it allows us, a bunch of formerly incarcerated people, to go back into prison. And I can tell you, my mom wasn't a fan of the idea of me going back to Angola after I come home. She's like, "You sure you want to do that?" But we go back in and we start mentoring people about what to expect. And then we pick them up at the prison. We don't tell them, "Hey, go home with your sister, with your friend, come find us after the weekend." We start right away. And evidence shows you don't wait to provide people support when they're in crisis. I don't need someone calling me a month or two after they've been out to tell me they're in trouble or they're about at a breaking point because they can't find a job and they have bills. That's why we start immediately. Peer pressure against criminal activity, not just how not to get in trouble. So we work really hard to make sure that our peer mentors aren't just teaching people how to color inside the lines, but why they should be doing so. We focus on social navigation and self-efficacy. We want people to be members of the community. We want people to be involved, and that leads into supporting civic engagement. We want our clients to eventually, depending on their sentence, many of them will be able to register to vote. We want them to be active. In fact, we want them to be the kind of client that's voting in those millage elections that only 5% of us vote in, and research and study. And we tell our clients, go join a church. Well, I'm not a religious person, some say. Go join one anyway. Show up 3 Sundays in a row. Someone's going to recognize you and invite you to dinner. Join an AA group. Join a community beautification project. Because when most people go to prison, they're in the darkness. They don't have a lot of good social connections. So we want them to have a lot of connections. When they stop showing up, somebody's going to give them a call and ask where they are and how they've been. Our 3 keys to reducing recidivism, this is as an organization: safe, stable housing, stable employment, strong social bonds. I know this is common sense, but this is our model. When people come home, even if they have a place to live, maybe they don't, we give them safe, stable housing. When we first started the organization, we rented 1 apartment, then we rented 2 apartments, then we rented 3 apartments, and then we bought our first property. We were so excited. We finally have our own house. Today we own and operate 34 properties in Baton Rouge that we use for transitional and post-transitional property. If you've never heard of us and wonder why you've never heard of us, it's because we're doing a good job. If we weren't doing a good job, WBRZ would be talking about us. We're doing a good job, so we don't lead the story. So we want to give our clients stable housing. We want to model that stable housing for them. We want to find them stable employment. People with idle time get into trouble. Our clients that work 40 hours a week or more, at the end of the day, they're like everyone else. They want to go home and take a nap. They don't want to go out. But we do want them to have strong social bonds, that they sometimes on nights or weekends you need to be involved in your community. You need to have a volunteer opportunity. You need to find ways to be active with others. And I'm going to run through these really quickly. This is sort of referring to what I mentioned earlier. We're going in before release and working with our clients. It doesn't start the moment they come home. Generally, there are 3 levels after release. There's intensive reentry, and that's generally the first month or 2 where our clients are in class with us. Before we send our clients to work, I have to teach them skills and give them opportunities for growth. Then when we feel confident, we get them a job, and that's when that step-down transition happens. They're still living with us. We're getting them to work. We're making sure they're showing up for work. They're seeing their parole officer. They're meeting all their commitments. And then our goal is to get clients to self-efficiency. We want clients not to be dependent on our support forever. It's a hand up, not a hand out. We want clients to be sufficient, but we continue to mentor them for a year, even a year after they leave our housing program. Some of the reentry courses we teach those first several weeks: social norms, building credit, avoiding scams. You give someone their first cell phone, they get on Facebook, they're going to be scammed in the first week or 2. You'd be surprised how often this happens. Healthcare navigation, social work groups. We have many peer support classes. Those first groups are courses taught by, for example, our banking courses taught by volunteers from local financial institutions. Our peer support classes, responsibility and accountability, self-discipline, overcoming stigma, are taught by formerly incarcerated mentors. We provide a lot of different services, such as getting people, benefits if they're eligible, obtaining their IDs, opening a bank account, helping them find employment. Many different services our organization provides. As I mentioned earlier, 34 total properties that we operate. We hold clients accountable for house rules. We teach clients how to save and obtain long-term housing. Some of our new programs, I'm not going to be able to cover all of these, but there's some new programs that we've instituted in the last few years. We're serving the same people, but we're just giving more services. Frederick Douglass Project visits. If you have never visited a prison, our organization brings people in to Hunt and LCIW monthly to visit a prison. I hope it piques your interest. You can go to paroleproject.org if you're interested in visiting a prison for a couple hours. It's a short drive from Baton Rouge. If you've never been there, it'll change your perspective. You're not going to come home and I'm not saying you're going to come home and want to change the criminal justice system, but you're going to better understand the shared humanity and that there are people coming home that need our support, and you're going to recognize that we all benefit when people come home and they're successful. I talked a little bit earlier about stakeholder engagement. We have a very good working relationship with the Department of Corrections. We're proud of that relationship. As I said, successful reentry impacts all of us. Most people who go to prison will come home someday. We follow the news. We see that a crime is committed, people are arrested, people are convicted, they go to prison, and that's the end of the story. But it's not the end of the story. People are in prison, and most people will come back to our community, the vast majority. It impacts all of us. We should all have a stake and want people in prison to have opportunities to better themselves and have opportunities to be successful, so we can invest in the front end and not the back end when if they have to go back through the criminal justice system. In summary, how can you help? You can make a financial contribution to a reentry organization like Louisiana Parole Project. I see my friend Brian Sleeth in here today. He runs an awesome organization, Christian Outreach. They do similar work. Reentry organizations are generally dependent on the support of their local community. Visit a prison. Go to Parole Project's website, look for Frederick Douglass Project Visit. We'd love to bring you on one of our visits in the coming future. If you're an employer, Second Chance Hiring is an initiative that our organization's working strongly from. I saw Tyler come in earlier. We really appreciate our partnership with Jerry Lane. Eric Lane for years has been a strong proponent of hiring people who come home from prison, and Eric and Tyler will tell you some of their best employees are people they've given a second chance to. Serve as a mentor to someone. Our organization, many reentry organizations, give mentor opportunities to appreciate mentors in the community, to join our organization and be a volunteer for us. And something as simple as encouragement. If you meet someone in church, if you meet someone on the job, you learn that they were incarcerated before. Many people wear their criminal history like a scarlet A. They're very embarrassed. If someone has come home and they're doing well, give them encouragement. Tell them you're proud. Tell them their community appreciates them being back. And that's the sort of thing that makes someone less likely to go back to prison. 2 minutes for questions, so I assume I can get 1 or 2 in. Yes?
Tell us, like you did yesterday, about how you buy multiple houses in an area, they network, and it helps reduce the crime in that area.
Sure. So the Restoration Project, which is one of our initiatives that's been funded by the Huey and Angelina Wilson Foundation. We're very early into the initiative. I think it's going to be 5 or 10 years to really prove our idea. But we've bought 2 houses in the Eden Park area. And we've put some of our younger high wage earning clients in those properties. For reduced rent, they're doing community service in that neighborhood. The goal is they're going to save their money, be good neighbors, impact that community. They want to be homeowners. They'll buy that property from us within a couple years. Then we'll take those monies and buy another property in that area with the hope over the next several years we can give some formerly incarcerated people the opportunity to be homeowners, but to be proud of their neighborhoods and try to reshape their neighborhoods. A lot of our properties that we operate as transitional housing are on Brightside. And there's a magic line, Jim Taylor Drive, where we tell our clients if there's a street named after a former LSU football player, don't cross that street. But on Brightside, we've purchased a couple dozen units, and police contacts actually on Brightside have dropped over the last several years now that we have about 100 people living in that area. Yes.
I know, first of all, thank you for working with you. I do work a lot in the entry for the local stuff, and I'm going to hand out a criticism. One of the things that I've noticed is there are a lot of opportunities at the state level, but there are not a lot of opportunities at the local level. But when I was looking at your slide, you're talking about this peer support information that they're doing while they're incarcerated. My question is, and everybody knows I'm talking about mental health. Do you provide mental health services for those individuals once they leave? Because again, like you said, you're never going to come back out the same. And so there were things that led up to that incarceration, and there are going to be things that you're going to have to deal with once you get out.
Thank you for that question. I'll do it in 30 seconds because I know everyone has to leave. So yes, we've been fortunate. We have one social worker on staff and a lot of social work, master's level social work interns from LSU. We recently received a Department of Justice grant that's going to allow us to hire a few additional social workers, and the project's going to allow us to do assessments with our social workers in the prisons before people are released, so we can identify what the issues are, and the goal is we do this better when we can meet people before they're released, and we could provide them referrals and accesses and plans before. It's obviously our organization can only do so much because we only have so many resources, but so many people who are coming home are not criminals by nature. They have mental health issues, and we're working to reduce that stigma. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today.